Nation, I'm Brandon Adams. Welcome to this Kroger Commitment Special as five-star linebacker Justin Williams has just announced his commitment for the Georgia Bulldogs. Happy to be joined by DawgNation's Connor Riley here there as well. Connor, this is not an unanticipated piece of news. I think a lot of Georgia fans had Williams circled for quite some time for reasons that I'm sure we'll get into over the course of the next few minutes. But my gosh, you talk about a sizable recruiting win here. Nation's number one linebacker, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, number 11 player overall. Obviously a high school teammate of recent Georgia commit Joseph Jonah Ajanye, kind of cleaning house there on the Oak Ridge program in Texas. Certainly that's a nice thing to see from Georgia. And rich get richer in terms of Glenn Schumann, a guy that I know you wrote about at DawgNation.com today, getting another really big recruiting win. But they don't come much bigger than this at any point in time in the person of Williams here. A lot to celebrate for Georgia fans here tonight.
No, this to me echoes one of the great Glenn Schumann recruiting wins of the past. In the 2019 recruiting cycle, there was a five-star prospect from a nearby Georgia high school. He ends up committing and going elsewhere to a Georgia rival. That is Owen Popo from Grayson High School. He ends up going and playing for Auburn. Has a very good career there for the Tigers and is in the NFL now. Georgia went out of state to recruit another five-star linebacker in that class, ended up winning that recruitment. That linebacker was Nakobe Dean, who is one of the all-time great defenders in this program history and perhaps maybe the best linebacker of all time. But that's a different discussion for a different day here. In this class, Georgia earlier on in this cycle sees Sammy Brown goes and plays for Clemson, a team Georgia will see over the next couple of seasons. They are set to open up the 2024 season against each other there. And what does Glenn Schumann go out and do? Goes up, makes up a ton of ground in the recruitment for Justin Williams. Obviously, Oregon was the other big team that was recruiting him. But Alabama was in on this kid, Texas obviously as well. And Georgia comes in late, makes up a ton of ground. He took a May unofficial visit, then took an official visit in June. And now Georgia has two commitments from Conroe, Texas, from Oak Ridge High School there, who both rank in the top 40 prospects in this country. Justin Williams, number one overall linebacker. Joseph Jonah Ajanye, a guy who is right now number 37. I think is a very, very good chance to end this class as a five-star prospect there. So for Glenn Schumann to go out and get this win once again, I think the most impressive thing here is this is a year after he signs Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen, and Troy Bowles, three top six linebackers in the 2023 recruiting class. And he just goes out and keeps it rolling. It speaks to, I think, Georgia's ability to develop and obviously the way Glenn Schumann connects with prospects such like Justin Williams.
I want to make a couple of other points here real quick. One of the things I think is interesting about this cycle, and I don't know if this is the recruits that happen to be in this cycle, if this is the kinds of players that Georgia's pursuing. I'm not quite so sure how you explain this necessarily, but Connor, it seems like there's just less mystery and intrigue around the recruiting process than there typically is. We knew that Dylan Raiola was going to Georgia well before he announced his pledge. I think most of us would have thought it was a good situation for Georgia tonight coming in with Williams. There is very little attempt at subterfuge, to use, I guess, a fancier word than I probably should. You know, recruits just don't seem all that intent in making you think one thing and then doing the other. I'm not saying there won't be big surprises in the age of NIL. That's, of course, a possibility. There was some of that in the 2023 class, of course. But in terms of, you know, the hat shows, the drama, I'm telling you this, but I really mean this. It doesn't seem like this brand of recruit cares about that as much anymore.
No, I think you're right there. It's a change in the type of recruit. And let's be honest here, with the advent of social media, with Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, 10 years ago, these kids weren't hearing the same sort of things from fans, from outside influences. And you can sort of understand how this recruiting process drags on and can be aware of anytime you open your phone or anytime you see that, you're seeing stuff from rival fan bases. And so you can understand there how that weighs on it. Kirby Smart was sort of asked this past week at SEC Media Days about, just the fact that Georgia has so many commitments at this point in the cycle. And well, yes, maybe part of him would like to believe that it's just the guy that Georgia is going after these days, that they want to get the recruitment done early. I think it's more of a byproduct of just where recruitments are right now in terms of where things are in the cycle, in terms of, NIL and the factor that plays, and kids just wanting to get in a class and have a spot, knowing that these big money offers are going to be thrown around earlier in recruitments. And so you're not sort of waiting there towards the end. You don't see these drawn out as much anymore. Williams Narini potentially deciding in the next week or so. KJ Bolden set to decide August 5th there for Georgia. There's a very, very good chance that other than maybe 2 or 3 prospects in total, Georgia's going to have its recruiting class wrapped up with 27, 28, maybe even 29 commitments by the end of August when football season starts.
There's another point I want to make here. To me, One of the most interesting non-Georgia stories in the SEC on the field this year is the fact that LSU is going to take Harold Perkins, who I believe was not just one of the best freshmen in the SEC a year ago. He may have been one of the best defensive players in the entire league. And I mean, even counting the guys at Georgia, Perkins was that good for LSU a year ago. Edge rusher, pass rusher type player. This year, it certainly seems like LSU is intent to put him at the inside linebacker spot, which to me, Connor, indicates that college football is still a different animal in the NFL. NFL guys, and I know you love that league, will tell you the premium positions are quarterback, left tackle, wide receiver, edge rusher, and cornerback. Probably those are the ones that the league is willing to sort of pay for. Everything else is at times somewhat expendable, it would seem. College football is just a different kind of deal here. Georgia's inside linebacker play is as much a reason they've won national championships as anything. And you mentioned Kobe Dean, that's a Butkus Award winner. Georgia could very easily have a Butkus Award winner this year. It's simply a matter of which linebacker actually wins it. Obviously, in 2017, when they broke through the first time, that was also a Butkus Award winning team that obviously featured Roquan Smith. The point I'm getting to here is in college football, I think inside linebacker play really, really matters. We treat it as a less sexy position than a guy coming off the edge. But when you see the way LSU wants to use Perkins this year, when you see what Georgia always gets out of its inside linebackers, I just think we have to really contend with the idea that inside linebacker means something different at the college level than it probably does at the NFL level.
Right, and you've even heard Kirby Smart talk about this, specifically within the regards to this 2023 team. If they're going to have issues in terms of winning one-on-one matchups on the defensive line and an edge rusher, Kirby Smart has sort of hinted, we're going to get creative with blitzing our linebackers. And throughout Kirby Smart's tenure, Roquan Smith was a guy that racked up 6 seasons in his Butkus Award-winning year. Kobe Dean had 6 sacks in his Butkus Award-winning year. Last year, in the win over Ohio State, Georgia had 4 sacks in that game. Only one of them came from a defensive lineman or edge play. Schumann, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, and Javon Bullard were all second-level blitzers. And you mentioned Harold Perkins there. I think a guy, and that's not to say that eventually these guys can't become that, but look at the way Michael Parsons, was sort of used and developed. At the college game, he was an off-ball linebacker. He was playing in that second level there at Penn State. And then when he moves on to the NFL, they put him on the edge because that's just where he happens to be best. You look at a guy like Georgia has right now, Jalen Walker, a guy that was a clear difference maker, in my opinion, as sort of an edge player last year. They've made it very clear this spring, while obviously he wasn't a full participant due to labrum surgery, he's a guy they envision using as an inside off-ball linebacker because I think of the athleticism, his range, ability to not just factor in as a guy, that can make plays in that sort of box area of the field, but also a guy who's athletic enough and smart enough to drop back into coverage and make life difficult there. And as I mentioned that, Jalen Walker, I bring in fresh from Italy, maybe some fresh pasta for us here, Jeff Santel, breaking down the 5-star commitment of Justin Williams, #1 inside linebacker in the 2024 class. Jeff, what good news and good tidings do you bring us here?
I guess I got to make some bad joke like that's Amore linebackers for Glenn Schumann. I mean, I got to say that, right?
Sure.
Former safety, this guy's 4.44. And really this decision, guys, comes down to 2 things. It comes down to where he wanted to feel at home at. And, of course, Georgia gave him that home feeling. Of course, this was a win over old friend Dan Lanning. And the other thing is it's simply development. You look at what Georgia's done. He just wanted to find the place that felt the most like home and also the place that would develop him like nowhere else. And you start thinking about Monty Rice, Ishmael Munden, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, Quay Walker, Channing Tindall, Kobe Dean. The Roquan Smith guy too. I mean, this is a situation. I think the big thing, everybody looks to these moments for perspective. You got Georgia now with the nation's #1 quarterback still in a lot of polls, Dylan Raiola, #1 cornerback. That's Ellis Robinson, the 4th. Now the nation's #1 linebacker. They've got a chance for a nation's #1 running back in Nate Frazier coming down the track for some polls in the next month or so. And then Williams Winery as well. That's a lot of #1s, guys, for the #1 team in the land.
Jeff, one of the things that you and I have talked about and was certainly evident in the interview that you did with Joseph Jonah after he committed to Georgia a couple of weeks ago, a lot of times we talk about like the idea of a package deal or 2 guys in the same school or 2 guys who are good friends ending up at the same place. And more often than not, that just fizzles out for whatever reason, because ultimately players need to do what's right for them and not necessarily what's right for them and their friend. That's just kind of the way all that goes. But it's hard not to notice what Jonah Ajonye told you, and obviously to see the decision that Williams makes here tonight. These guys must have a truly special bond, and this must be the kind of thing that supersedes the typical high school teammate relationship or recruiting friend relationship. It seems like what these two guys from Oak Ridge High School seem to have going for them out of Texas is a pretty special and unique bond here. Hard not to notice that.
I think, guys, and I know, Connor, a lot of your reporting, I was thinking about this while I was on the Amalfi Coast. Unfortunately, guys, it's hard for me to stay away from my mind right now the way Georgia does
Which,
these
by
things.
the way, Kirby, you may have missed this, Jeff, because you were on vacation. Kirby Smart said Mary Beth wanted to go to the Amalfi Coast, and instead they went to Mississippi for a travel baseball tournament. So you were living the kind of charm life that even the great Mary Beth Smart can only dream about. One of these days, maybe she can actually go to the Amalfi Coast, and when she gets there, you can tell her where to eat because you've already been there.
I'll tell you, it says something about my wife's taste and Kirby's wife's taste, right? I guess
so.
Unfortunately, one of those two gentlemen in that comparison can probably. I must have saw a million yachts, guys. I saw yachts with like helicopters on it, like two speedboats on it. But the thing you look at with this, and what I was alluding to, Connor, is I think we got to reset everything with Georgia now. You reset. Do package deals happen? Well, sometimes they do here when you have this sort of development. Can a guy like Carson Beck only start 15 games and perhaps be a first-round pick? Well, I think you just got to reset what's happening here because Georgia's doing things differently, better, faster, bigger, stronger than ever before. Think about this for a second. Some NFL executive will look at the Carson Beck example and they'll say, yeah, he's only started 15 games, potentially 15 games. That would be a nice little innuendo I've kind of wrapped up in there right there. But he's practiced for 2 or 3 years against Georgia's defense, which is filled full of NFL guys. And those types of reps, that type of development, it probably says a lot more than maybe starting another 10 games in the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or something like that. I just think a lot of things with Georgia football, they've reached this tier of the atmosphere where we haven't seen this before. We shouldn't expect to see this before. I mean, guys, I was looking through my phone and I thought it was sun optics or glare. Or maybe they don't get the full story over there in Italy, but I saw that all SEC first teams and all SEC defenses. And I'm like, no one team is supposed to put this many guys on these squads. And you don't even have Dominic Lovett on there yet. You don't even have like a guy like Carson Beck on there yet. Some of Georgia's best potential players for 2023. The world just doesn't know about it yet.
So let me ask you both this. Obviously, Joseph Jonah-Ajonye proved to be prophetic in terms of essentially treating Justin Williams like he was a Georgia commit before it ultimately happened. The other guy that he kind of talks that way about, maybe not quite as confidently, but still certainly very hopefully, is with Williams Nwaneri, who coming down to the wire, it seems like Oklahoma and Missouri remain big factors there. And certainly the online chatter would lead you to believe they don't plan to be outspent when it comes to trying to, potentially win with Nwaneri right now. So, how much does this momentum that's kind of emerged on the defensive side of the ball here, does that foreshadow what might have happened with Nwaneri eventually? And I guess if you want to say KJ Bolden on August the 5th there as well, how much does this become the kind of very tangible defensive momentum the way that Georgia had on the offensive side of the ball there when they got 4 offensive linemen over the course of a 9-day span? Does this tell you anything about what could happen with Nwaneri and what could happen with Bolden maybe coming up as well?
Yeah, Brandon, that's a good point. I think I didn't want to spell it out for everybody in big, bold letters, but the number one defensive lineman would be Williams Nwaneri. The number one safety in the country would be KJ Bolden. You see what the Dogs are doing here. And, you start adding a couple more names to this class, and the class might even be done by August 10th, August 15th, August 20th, and folks are going to go, what's going on now? Is everybody going to get revved up about the 2025 recruiting class? Or are they going to they're gonna sit there and they're gonna go, okay, what happens with DeMarcus Riddick on the 26th, and what does that mean for Christopher Jones? What does that mean for Chris Cole? I think those are maybe some missing pieces of the 2024 recruiting class. We mentioned Nate Frazier, the running back, but I keep saying this is you step back for a second and you say this is good for any program. But now this is even like rarefied air for the Georgia football recruiting machine right now, what they keep adding. I mean, this is a true 4-4 linebacker. It was funny. His teammate, Joseph Jonah-Ajonye, was telling me, he's like, listen, all I got to say is he wants to go to the place where he can get developed like nowhere else. And he says, and it's obvious when it's on the defensive side of the ball, you got to be talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. You see what Georgia's done. You see what it's doing. You see how it's reloading. I mean, I can't fathom how Georgia could do this today with the number one linebacker in the country, Justin Williams, when they just did, I think, the number 3, the number 4, and the number 8 linebacker a year ago. This room And it's starting to be a really popular conversation. Like, I know a lot of times the future power rankings come out or future position rankings come out. You got to sit here and think really hard about which position long-term is now going to be the strongest position on the Georgia Bulldogs amongst a very stacked group. And the on-field's never been better. Talking season's never been better. Recruiting has never been better. I mean, I want to tell you, I picked a good time to come back and punch that clock and come back, start working, guys.
Connor, is there extra value to you for the fact that Texas is about to be in the SEC next year? Now, listen, Georgia's recruited Texas well before. There's obviously going to be a lot of great players come out of Texas. They're going to have your opportunity there. But, Georgia kind of planting this additional flag here a year before the Longhorns join the SEC. Is there extra value to this in your mind?
I absolutely think that is the case here. I think Texas, if anything, becomes a more, possible recruiting ground for Georgia moving forward, given, over the course of a 4-year span, they're going to play in Texas twice over those 2 years with Texas and A&M, assuming they eventually play at A&M. I'm skeptical we're ever still going to see that. But the larger point there, so you land two teammates from Conroe, Texas, and doing some quick research here. As it stands right now, Williams and Joseph Ajanye are the two highest pair of commitments that are teammates who ever play for the same high school that will be going to Georgia. And that might last a total of 11 days, 12 days if KJ Bolden does in fact choose Georgia on this fifth there, with him now technically being high school teammates with Dylan Raiola. It just speaks to, one, I think Georgia's large recruiting apparatus and their ability to go national. And while some people have nitpicked Georgia's ability to recruit specifically in Gwinnett County there, yes, Gwinnett County is one of the great recruiting hotbeds in the country. I think Kirby Smart has shown you time and time again, you need to be able to go out across the country and land players, because as much talent as there is in Gwinnett County, there's not going to be enough to fill your roster every single year. And so while, yes, it's important to lock up the home state, and Kirby Smart has stressed that time and time again, that's just not the way that you're able to recruit specifically the area of Atlanta, just given the proximity to so many other big programs there. And that's why I think the most impressive thing for me here is their ability to now, when we first saw Kirby Smart get things rolling in the 2017, 18, 19 cycles, we had sort of started to see this, can you really go into California and land, a 5-star prospect? Can you go, land a Keely Ringo out of Arizona, Darnell Washington out of Las Vegas? At the time, that just because we hadn't seen Georgia do that a whole lot, it seemed like a pipe dream. Now it's almost an expectation that, Georgia's going to go to all flungs of the country. They're going to go land, Ellis Robinson, yes, is playing at IMG Academy, but it's from New Haven, Connecticut. They're going to be able to go out there and contend for Nate Frazier from Santa Ana, California out there. So this is a Georgia program that is able to recruit nationally, and the ability to go into Texas and win like this, I think, speaks to the full-fledged power that this Georgia program has now behind it.
Only a couple final thoughts from me, and then we'll take whatever final thoughts exist out there from everybody else. But big race for Glenn Schumann, overtures from, the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm sure probably college jobs there as well. He seems, content to stay at Georgia right now. And Connor, should I read into this commitment, the 3 big signings a year ago, that obviously the recruits, those that matter the most important constituency out there, they believe it's still a long-range, long-term relationship for Schumann here at Georgia?
I do. I think the thing with Schumann to keep in mind, similar to what we saw with Dan Lanning, is I think Glenn Schumann can afford to be picky now. He's making $1.9 million. I believe he's either the second or third highest paid defensive coordinator in the sport there. In a very great situation here with Will Muschamp as the co-defensive coordinator. A lot of just institutional knowledge on that staff. It's his 8th year in this Georgia program working under Kirby Smart. Trey Scott, his 7th season with the program there as well. They have some real stability there through the spine of that defense. And so, with Glenn Schumann, I think it's ultimately not a question of when he leaves, but it's what job comes open that attracts him or entices him enough. And, he's not going to need to go take a Sun Belt head coaching job or an American Athletic coaching job. I'm talking along the lines, and I threw this out on my show last night. Let's say Mack Brown does decide to retire after this year. I think North Carolina's first call should be to Glenn Schumann there. I think that is the type of job, and that's somewhat a similar vein to what Dan Lanning got at Oregon there. That is the type of job that I think could entice him. Or he could be very content to just wait for the right SEC job to open. And I think with what you've seen from him, his ability to recruit, his ability to develop talent, he's got the bona fides to really land and stick in that job. Ultimately, I do expect him to one day be a full-time SEC head coach and be a guy that quite frankly, I think one day is going to be a problem for Kirby Smart as an adversary on the recruiting trail and much less on the field.
Yeah, as far as the first job goes, I would put North Carolina somewhere in the top 40, I think, of jobs nationally. Pretty good recruiting background, nice academic stuff. They've got plenty of money, even though they're in the ACC. I'd put that as about a top 40 job. I don't think that Glenn Schumann should accept anything less than that for his first job. Look at the NFL draft this year. There were virtually no Group of 5 players selected. There was hardly any FCS players selected. There's kind of a talent drain to the top right now. The middle and lower tiers of college football have never had less talent than they have right now because the transfer portal is putting good players on better teams. I think coaches pay attention to that. And the byproduct to all that is Georgia may actually hold on to some of its assistant coaches a little longer than maybe it would have in the past, because the kinds of jobs that might be a good first job, a Group of 5 head coach or something like that, I don't think those jobs are as good as they once were because of how little talent exists in the Group of 5 right now. And by the way, the Group of 5 has also been picked over a little bit too because of Big 12 expansion and things like that. So, Connor, I think you're bringing up a really good point by, kind of what Glenn Schumann's future might be. Jeff, I guess a final thought from you here, fresh out of the trip to Italy and back here stateside again. How about you reacting one final time to the Justin Williams commitment here?
Yeah, it's something when you got up this morning. I got up this morning, guys, at 5 a.m. in Italy. I flew 12 hours about it, 6-hour time difference. And here's the perspective piece. And I'm just going to say it. There's a chance. The chance just got stronger today. Think about this, folks. Listen in real close. The number 1, the number 3, the number 4, the number 7, the number 11 prospects in the country, when everybody signed and sealed in 2024, could all be Georgia Bulldogs. That's 5 out of the top 11. Think about that for a second. 5 out of the top 11 going to the Georgia Bulldogs, the team that already has the most NFL-laden, all eyes on it, NFL roster ever. And, Brennan, you and I have kidded about this a lot over the channels, but over the years, and now it just seems with every passing month or every big 5-star like this, it seems more real that folks might look at 2021 and 2022 as really the start and not the apex of something truly special. Because Georgia, and here's the difference, they got 7 5-stars in 2018, but the Dogs are doing this so much differently in the era of NIL and in transfer portal. They're holding on to players. They're getting these players when there's already so many strong incumbents waiting in the wings for their turn to play, and 1 season out, 2 seasons out. And the other thing they're doing, I think you guys, everybody tuned in and saw the live feed for Justin Williams tonight. He referenced his faith. He referenced the people that got him there. Georgia is selecting the right players for its system that also just happen to be nationally the top players in the country in a lot of cases, especially in core places on its defense, core places on its offense. I mean, I just want folks to realize this is really special right now to be a part of, to cover and watch, and to think about how many apex moments I've seen so far for this program, and to see them continue to find clear new bars and clear new benchmarks and set new standards for what a program can accomplish on the recruiting trail, Brandon. Maybe Glenn Schumann's first job might be the Florida Gators in about 2 years, Brandon.
Don't speak that negativity into existence. We certainly don't want that. You were doing great, Jeff, right to that last moment. Everything was great until that very last moment. But obviously, Glenn Schumann going to be a very attractive head coaching candidate in the very near future. We certainly understand that. Connor, how about a final thought from you before we say goodbye here tonight?
Yeah, we've done enough of these, and I think the DawgNation audience that follows and certainly listens to Jeff knew that this 2024 recruiting class was going to have to be a class that was heavy on the offensive side of the ball in terms of reloading there and getting more talent. And as much as we're sitting here talking about Glenn Schumann, Justin Williams, linebackers in this class, they have done that on offense. 2 quarterback commitments in Puglisi and Dylan Raiola, potentially 3 running back commitments, 3 talented wide receiver commitments, 2 tight end commitments, 5, maybe 6 offensive line commitments. I don't know where the current number is right now. There were so many when I was on vacation that week there. They've loaded up on the offensive side of the ball. And yet, having said all of that and establishing that this is an offensive heavy class, at least from the on-field numbers, there is a chance that they already have a commitment, as Jeff pointed out, from the number 1 quarterback in this class, in Ellis Robinson, who I think has a chance to make his stake as the number 1 overall player in this class, and has a chance to be, if I'm remembering the recruiting rankings right, the highest rated cornerback since Derek Stingley Jr. Back in the 2019 cycle there. They have now a commitment from the number 1 inside linebacker in Justin Williams. And with what is left out there, they have a chance to land the number one safety in KJ Bolden and the number one defensive lineman in Williams Narini. Obviously rankings are going to change. Guys are going to move around, things like that. But that's an unprecedented haul. I don't need to go look and do some research there to be able to have that level of talent coming in to your program at every single level and at every single spot in the defense. Jeff's absolutely right. Brendan's absolutely right. We're going to look back on that 2021 team and what was a special defense. And it was. There's no taking that away from them. That's going to be the standard at Georgia on a year in, year out basis here pretty quickly, given the defensive talent they signed in the 2022 class, the 2023 class, and what they're putting together in the 2024 class. And landing 5-star linebacker Justin Williams is just another reminder of that.
An exciting thought for Georgia fans for sure, and a good way to end our conversation here tonight. Kroger Commitment Special, 5-star linebacker Justin Williams has committed to Georgia, becoming another member of this number 1 ranked class here for 2024. Big thanks to Kroger for making it all possible. Don't forget, as you're enjoying grilling season at this time of year, all the food to put on the grill, the plates, the napkins for the cookout, the side dishes, the beverages in the cooler, all of those great things, you can find great savings on them all right there at your local Kroger. So stop by and enjoy all of that. I'm sure we'll see you very soon for another Kroger Commitment Special before it's all said and done. Certainly, I'll see you tomorrow morning for DawgNation Daily. Looking forward to having Connor Riley on. We'll continue this conversation there. Of course, read plenty from both Connor Riley and Jeff Sintel now fresh back from vacation on the brand new look, DawgNation.com. We've certainly enjoyed the rollout of all of that. And, of course, we'll talk to you again very soon right here on the DawgNation video channels. Have a great night, everybody.